Who is a person that you admire and why?
Among economists, we all have our, so thing. It's where I know a little bit professionally, but Bob Solow, Robert Solow of MIT, who was my colleague during the years I was there, and has always been my model for being, first of all, just a great economist, but more than that, just a incredibly balanced human being. It's just that the humanity, sense of good humor shines through even his technical papers. So there's somebody I really, really admire. And he's in his 90s now and still going strong. And I hope that I can be like that. Actually, who I enormously admire in political life is, in fact, Nancy Pelosi. That combination. Actually, I've interviewed her. I've done your role with her, and you'd never know it, but she's actually not just sharp as a tack, but she's a riot. She's hilarious, and but her ability to stay focused, and we wouldn't have had Obamacare without her. The only sense we have going right now is in governance is coming from her, and I have, in an intellectual sense, to be a woman and to be doing that is really amazing. So those would be probably the two people that come to mind right now.
What is the book or books that have changed how you view the world, and how so? And what are you reading right now?
Let's see. When I was a teenager, I read Isaac Asimov's Foundation science fiction novels, which were about mathematical social scientists who saved civilization. So at some level, that's what I wanted to be. I was hugely influenced. I took one philosophy course in college, and I read David Hume about skepticism. About basically the question is, how do you know what you know? Do you know what you know? Where's your, and that has had a tremendous influence on me, just in terms of, you don't take things on faith. You ask yourself, where does it come from? And that had a really lasting influence. And it was only much later on that I learned that David Hume probably wrote the first thing that we would consider economics in the modern sense, even before Adam Smith. So he wrote about a piece called On the Balance of Trade in the 1750s, which is the beginning of economics as we know it now. And John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes is general theory of employment, interest, and money is not recommended as light reading. It's kind of difficult and a little bit tortured even for a professional. But you do get a sense of what it really is to think through and to think different. They all think different, but that becomes a slogan. And in fact, but he really did, and that was reading that. I think in some ways, it wasn't until I was in my 50s that I could properly understand what he was getting at, what it took to write that book. What I'm reading now is I mix a lot of nerdy, silly stuff. So I'm reading N.K. Jemisin's science fiction, and I just finished rewatching season 2 of Westworld, so I can start watching the new season, and history. I'm slowly working my way through William Dalrymple's The Anarchy, which is about the rise of the East India Company, which is just fascinating. I mean, again, the history is full of, I'm not sure what the direct lessons are, but it's just, wow. There's a lot of history out there.
Is there one person, dead or living, you would want to interview more than anyone else? If so, who and why?
I would love to interview Julius Caesar, believe it or not. Not because I admire his conquests and all of that, but because what really comes through in everything you read about him and everything, even in his own writing, is that this was somebody who was just way more, he seems to have been ahead of or outside of his time. He clearly had a level of self-awareness and ability to weirdly speaking, for somebody who's conquered the world, he clearly had his ego under control. And he sort of, Cicero, you fought with my enemies, but on the other hand, you're a great orator, so I'm going to spare you and let you continue to supply glory to Roman culture. So that rather weirdly, I would actually, I'd like to meet Julius Caesar, though preferably unarmed.
Right. Yes, I think that's a great person, really, really unique. This next question sort of reminds me of when Jerry Seinfeld talks about the moment before he was on the Tonight Show and then after. There was like a before and after. So here's this next question to you. Some of our guests can tie their success to one key breakthrough. Did you experience a tipping point in your career?
Oh yeah, I did, but it's a long ways back. I mean, I was 26 years old. I wrote the breakthrough paper in the work that eventually got me the Nobel Prize, and there was literally the way economics works is that stuff gets presented at seminars. So you have 90 minutes. You have a paper, you do a presentation, you're barraged with questions, and I did a 90-minute presentation in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at the Summer Institute at the National Bureau of Economic Research, and my life changed. Everyone said, "Oh, that is a guy with interesting ideas," and all of a sudden, I made that transition from being just another hopeful to being somebody who was taken seriously inside the profession.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely a before and an after. Last question, and I think this is such fun because of the one word in this following sentence. What view do you hold that is most controversial in your professional life?
Oh my professional life. Oh well, I mean it depends. I've had two professional lives, so let's talk about. As a professional economist, I'm probably embarrassingly mainstream. I think largely because the things I did have that might have seemed radical once upon a time are now mainstream. But I mean, in my punditry role, I think being what I say actually in Arguing with Zombies, I talk about being honest about dishonesty and being willing to talk about motives. Because so much of my time is spent arguing against zombies, I find that it's important to say, look, the people making this argument here are not being honest. This is not a good faith discussion we're having, and I'm doing a disservice to the readers if I pretend otherwise, even though journalistic conventions are to always try to be nice and give benefit of the doubt. There comes a point when there's no doubt to give benefit to, and you just have to say that. And then you say if these people are lying all the time, again, to be honest with the readers, you have to say why. You have to say, look, these ideas are sustained entirely by a network of right-wing billionaires or something like that. So the willingness. I mean, I don't think I ever engage in personal insults, but my willingness to be rather blunt about what it is I'm arguing with is something that I know a lot of other people in the opinion world find distasteful. They prefer the kind of gentlemanly demeanor. And I say that's just not being fair to the readers.
Mm-hmm. I find there's three ways to communicate: subtle, direct, and blunt.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit below. Yeah, blunt is what I do. It's I can turn it off. I've written government. I spent a year in the U.S. government, and I was very good at euphemisms there. If necessary, I can be. But I most of the time I think it's inappropriate.
Yeah, okay, excellent.